after I left and I got here to Las Vegas, I was letting him know that, my time out there in Georgia, in the midst of you Jehovah's Witness brothers, it wasn't just for me, it was for you as well. So don't ever think that as a Christian, as a Jehovah's Witness, or as whatever religious sect that you've given yourself to and become that product, don't ever feel, even if you're not in any religion, but we are all human beings, we are a member of humanity. Every single encounter that is placed before you is ordained by the Creator for you to come in contact with. It's for you too, not only for them. So I told this brother that I was there as a lesson for you guys to see if you were indeed Jehovah's Witnesses, the same as I was put before you as a lesson in terms of myself, to see how I was going to govern myself in the process of learning you guys as Jehovah's Witnesses. Brother Charles was really trying to look out for me while I was out there. He was doing the right thing, but the right thing, his perception was rooted in him thinking that I was going to eventually become a Jehovah's Witness, which, as I said before, wasn't entirely his fault, because I was interested in that. Especially during that time, I needed some type of support system around me, because that was my first time in the South. And when I became friends with Brother Richard, and I would listen to Brother Richard talk and how he had explained the scriptures, and he tied in the scriptures based upon what I was currently going through with Salam Yilma. And as I said before, I looked at his lifestyle, I saw his mannerism, I saw his mannerism towards me, and his mannerism towards everyone. He still is a good man. And so that's what influenced me to give it a shot. As time went on, as I said, at the bar, there was a woman sitting next to me with her friend. And she was trying to get my attention. She kept bumping into me. And so I told Brother Richard, I'm like, I whispered to him, I said, these women out here are tripping. He said, what's going on? I said, this woman keeps bumping into me. It's almost like she's trying to get my attention. And so we got into a conversation. And I think the bartender, which was a woman, and Brother Charles had got into a conversation about cooking, stuff like that, feeding your man and everything. And so I just all of a sudden said, well, I've learned that it's best not to depend upon anyone to feed you. I'm never going to allow anyone to feed me, whether it's my wife, girlfriend, or whatever. I can feed myself. And, I was only speaking that way because of what I was suffering under Salam Yilma. And so the young lady who sat next to me, she said, well, that's a woman's job to feed her man. That's a woman's job to feed her man. And I was just saying, yeah, but I'm responsible for feeding myself. And that's the common black woman. She just kept talking, pushing the issue. And so I started getting irritated because I'm still in a whole lot of pain. I'm still humiliated. I'm in pain. And I'm not trying to hear nothing from no woman right now. And so me and her started going back and forth. And all of a sudden I looked over at Brother Richard and Charles and said, "Are y'all ready to go?" And that shocked them. And so Brother Richard said, "Come on. And so Brother Richard was taking me back. This is after I had moved out of Salon's place and I was staying with Kathy. And he was like asking me, he said, "What was that all about?" I said, "Man, I'm hurt. I'm hurt. I'm humiliated. I'm angry." I said, I was trying to tell him what was going on at Kathy's place, because here is Kathy trying to tell me when to eat. She would make me a plate of food and put it on the table downstairs because I was spending a lot of time upstairs to myself, and she had this thing for me, and obviously she felt like I wasn't paying her enough attention. So she was making my plate and putting it on the table, yelling upstairs, "Mr. David, you need to come down here and eat." And so I was telling Richard that there's this whole control factor going on out here in terms of me. I have one woman trying to starve me, trying to tell me I can't eat. And now I got this woman telling me when to eat. It's crazy, I said, and then you got this woman here at the bar and she just won't be quiet and she just keeps running her mouth, and I'm starting to get angry. And I was telling him, and I have to be very careful on how I react out here, because I was in a state of mind that wasn't good. And I knew that the way that I was feeling and the way that I was thinking could have landed me in a Georgia prison. And I wasn't about to go to prison for nobody, especially out there in Georgia. But I was even telling him, I'm even willing to apologize to her if I ever see her again. I said, because she doesn't know what I've suffered. I said, I'm hurting right now, and I don't know what I want to do. I said, I just know that I'm in a lot of pain right now, and I just want to leave. I just want to leave, because everybody, it seems as though, even though everyone knew what was done to me, due to the fact that they were not going through it, their perception of my behavior was rude. And I could understand why they felt it. But at the same time, you understand that this man is hurt. He gave up everything in his life and he came out here. And so he sat down and he told y'all what he was going through, what happened to him, and how he's feeling. So his reaction should not surprise you if you were indeed paying attention. Now, his reaction may not be justified to you, because actually it's not even justified to him. Because I could have handled that better, but at that particular time, I wasn't able to. My hurt and my anger sided with the way that I reacted instead of in opposition of that. That's what I was trying to, that's what I was explaining to Richard. as what was aggressively asserted of Yeshua to the church, this is what's going on this present moment right now in the world today. You know, when he had mentioned you bow before the letter of the law, but you violate the heart of the law. That's what's going on today. You know, there's a whole lot of people who are so into the word biblical, you know, the biblical words, but as soon as they come out of the book, they violate the heart of the law, and therefore they violate the principles of divinity in accordance to how they treat one another, even within the church community and in the religious community, and therefore even in the world. This is what's going on today, as it has been going on for centuries. Because obviously, back when he had brought this to their attention, obviously the church didn't resolve themselves in terms of that. Because even after that, they worked along with the Roman government, and they had him crucified, even though a whole lot of believers said that it was a part of prophecy. When to me, it was just a religious and political assassination of a man who spoke truth. You see that going on today. As I mentioned in my times in Georgia, you know, I was around a whole lot of people who understood the word biblically, you know, but there was very few who struggled to try to do exactly what was in their hearts to do. However, there was a whole lot of wicked influences who were more so biblical, who forced and influenced them to compromise what was in their hearts towards me. And this is another reason why, or I would say the primary reason why, all of the people who I felt as though I grew close friendship with cut it all off. So what was in their hearts, what they wanted to continue, that was in their hearts, that was compromised by people who were more biblical than moral. That's what's going on in the world today, in a whole lot of different areas. But as you move forward, you try to grow internally, and you try to understand what the Creator gives you, even outside the biblical, you know, because even Yeshua had said that in time the Spirit of truth is going to come, and it's going to guide you to all truth. So that right there is telling you that the facts are not in the books. It's not in religion. It's not in the church. It's inside of the human being. As he once said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, the heart of the human being. It's in the heart of the human being. And as I said before, the very definition of religion implies that God is not present in religion, because the definition of religion is man's search for God. But everyone tries to, what I've noticed, try to design the definition of their religion away from the primary definition of religion. They try to say being a Muslim is one who submits his will to do the will of God. You know, but with my experience in the Muslim community, I didn't meet anyone who fulfilled that definition. But what it all boils down to, and this is going to be a very short video, very short, but when it comes to righteousness, Righteousness has no meaning and it has no revealing factor simply by studying the scriptures and memorizing the scriptures and articulating the scriptures in terms of where this scripture relates to this certain living condition. It has everything to do with how you treat other human beings. And that's basically principle of action, like I speak of all the time. And principles of action, divine principles of action, covers every area of divine living, whether it's religion, whether it's being a father or a mother, or a brother or a sister, or even an auntie or a cousin. Everything is about how you treat other human beings, and it reveals of how ones treat themselves, because you have to first mistreat yourself in terms of compromising your moral status in order to decide to mistreat others. You have to first mistreat oneself. So it's always going to start with us. It's never going to be this institutional thing that a whole lot of people claim is the right way to go. Well, if this person is not going to join the Nation of Islam, then we're not going to talk to him anymore. Or if this person decides to where he's not going to come on board with us at Jehovah's Witnesses, then we need to cut our ties. And then you wonder why the majority of the world look at different religions as cults, because that's exactly what you are. With that thinking process, that's exactly what you are. I don't care what you say you are. What you do reveals who and what you are. As he said, you bow to the letter of the law, but you violate the heart of the law. Justice, mercy, good faith. That's what it's about. And unless you know how to treat other human beings, what you say you believe, what you say you are based upon what you believe, doesn't mean anything. And when it comes to each of us as human beings, a part of this human family, the best way that we can make one another better examples, we have to first become better examples unto ourselves. What I've come to notice during this whole life journey, we spend so much time pointing the finger at other people. And as a lot of the elders used to tell us, while you're pointing one finger at someone else, it's three fingers pointing back at you. The best persuasion will always be by way of example. For me to persuade you to do better, I first have to be doing better. You have to observe David and say, wow, okay, he's a good example for me, and vice versa. I've come in contact with a whole lot of people who were very good examples for me. And I've been good examples for other people. And in this exchange of the demonstration of being good examples, this is how we help one another become better human beings. We have to have good examples. What's going on in the world this day, especially in the quote unquote black community, we have too many, you might as well say subhuman beings who have lost their humanity. And in the process, we have these people being made rich and being put into the positions to freely promote this immorality in the world. And this is affecting our youth as well as our adults nowadays, to where this hip hop poison is going on. You have pastors who are totally corrupt. And we have these shows, these shows that we watch every week, to where they are promoting criminals as heroes. And the way that these people, these characters are developed, they're killers, they're drug dealers, they're people who live their lives as tools of corruption. However, the way that these shows are written and how they're promoted, you find yourself never wanting these people who are totally corrupt to get caught and imprisoned, when all at the same time, this criminal behavior is being promoted as heroes. And people who are trying to clean the streets up, whether they're police officers or people in other areas of trying to perform themselves to try to make a world a better place, those people are promoted as either snitches, Uncle Toms, or coons, and all of these titles that pretty much attack people who are totally against the immorality of the world. So it's like you have a lot of shows out here now, like Power and all these other shows that are promoting people of criminal behavior and criminal lifestyles as heroes. And you find yourself falling in love with these images that are based upon reality. And you find yourself rooting for them without really paying attention of how what you are looking at and therefore feeding on is forcing you or poisoning you to compromise your moral principles in terms of what is right and what is wrong. So the word does speak on, as time goes on in a world, what used to be considered wrong is going to be considered right, and vice versa. And so we are going to have to understand of how what we observe visually, mentally, and intellectually, that's equivalent to eating. You're consuming all of these things and you're bringing these things on the inside. And they're just not good eating. I mean, the same as you eat some food that is not good for you, it's going to make your organism sick. The same as observing certain shows and listening to certain music is going to produce a mind that is contaminated. And sooner or later it's going to filter into a doctrine and a way of thinking, and therefore a principle of action. You're going to start acting out these things because this is what your mind is feeding on consistently. So this is what's going on in this world today. And if you're not very observant and careful of oneself, you're going to find yourself not seeing any wrong in what is wrong. And you're going to become blind of not seeing any right in what is right. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful in a whole lot of ways. So basically, the greatest persuasion will forever be example. And we have a whole lot of examples out here being put before us that are not really good examples, but they're being propagated and created as good examples, and they're being put into shows, and they're filtered through this world of entertainment. But if you're not very careful on how you are being affected by what you're eating intellectually, by way of your visual observation, you're going to find yourself compromising your moral standards and the way that you're perceiving things, and the way that you are allowing these certain levels of perception to affect your thinking process. You're going to find yourself compromising your moral standards. So you have to be careful with that. So the best persuasion will always be example. And so not everything should be looked up to as an example of how to be. So we just have to be very careful.